So I am excited to have a conversation that honestly, I've spoken with somebody from People Admin years ago. So it's nice to be able to revisit the great work that they are doing with additional team members, get some new perspectives, and having two people on obviously is a treat to bring in more voices to the show here. So we will start out as we always do, have our guests introduce themselves briefly, and then get into what People Admin does and our topic for the day, which is centering a lot on sort of talent in higher ed, which I feel like has become a much more of a hot topic, which is definitely very refreshing for me. But so Lucas, if you want to kick us off, introduce yourself, and then we'll go to you, Jackie.
Hello, I'm Lucas Delproire. I am the product manager at People Admin. Specifically, I work with faculty all day in our faculty information system for SIS. So I just partner and work a lot with universities to help faculty look good, help them get promoted in our promotion and tenure workflow. We are deeply involved in retention, so this will be fun.
My name is Jackie Witchko, and I am the Director of Product Management for the People Admin Product Suite. And my focus is on delighting customers. And I do this through creating new and enhancing existing products to make their work as easy as possible.
You know, the focuses that you have, so the outcomes, the impact that you're looking to have, because I think just a lot to be said just for the sort of quality of life of sort of, faculty working their day to day, but then, retaining them and getting them towards their professional goals and everything, and just getting good people doing good work at institutions is time well spent. So if both of you have slightly different perspectives on the work that you're doing, obviously we could kind of be more like specialized lens or more sort of broader ones, but if you want to explain briefly what People Admin does for anybody that's not aware, we'll start with you, Jackie, with sort of your broader view, and then go to you, Lucas.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so People Admin is the only complete SaaS unified cloud platform, and it's tailor-made for the higher ed market. So that's something that we really focus on. And within the higher ed cloud, it empowers more effective talent management. It helps streamline academic affairs and truly freeing up faculty and staff to get time back and focus on what really matters, which is obviously student outcomes.
Yeah, I know, Lucas, you have more of a faculty lens, which I think is kind of what Jackie is saying, all of the things, one, again, on principle, it's important to sort of focus on the faculty experience, but it's like if you have satisfied, efficient faculty doing their work, students are going to have a better experience as well and everything. So I guess just, the sort of the importance of, what you're doing, if you want to explain what it is, and also just why, I guess it's, why it's so crucial.
What I work on specifically is the faculty information system. So it's a lot of faculty searches, faculty activity reporting, promotion and tenure, course scheduling, evaluation, web profiles. The list goes on. A big part of that is just trying to help faculty look good, make it really easy for them to pull in their accomplishments, all the great stuff they've researched, bring that in through one-click kind of import process, have it all roll up in a nice clean format that might be, public-facing for a university website. We want to reduce as much time as possible for their administrative tasks. So they can focus on the stuff that they consider meaningful, the teaching, the researching, etc. And in doing all of that and saving them that time, making them look good, they're going to flourish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, to kind of get to my next question, we'll stick with you first on this one, Lucas. There's certainly, and I think we'll kind of hit on both of these areas. One, there's sort of the tip of the spear of recruiting faculty to come work at your institution. You want to sort of, be able to kind of make a value proposition to them of this is a great place to work. And this is why, because this is what we sort of offer you and experience and everything. Because it's in lieu of having a tool such as yours, I would imagine, it is just left up to each individual faculty member to maybe sort of just try to, capture what they're doing or figure out the best way to do what they're doing, or, any of those sort of things. So, what do you see as sort of the current context and stakes for sort of the war for talent in higher ed? I mean, I think just for you starting off, it's going to be more focused on, the faculty experience and everything. But, I think there's a lot of dynamics here. One of sort of the recruiting, but we'll kind of start with kind of where we were sort of spending most of our time of the actual experience day to day. And that obviously, that is a big piece of the puzzle here.
The context is so different. The war for talent is it's a great term. I think one of the more pronounced challenges, recruitment processes, is just there's all these new expectations. They've just been so intensely heightened in the last, even still in the last year, 2022. Hybrid work is what everyone wants now, and all faculty want. I mean, the largest single group, I think, like 40% of faculty prefer to teach in a hybrid manner. I think it's only like 27 who really want to be primarily remote. And a lot of the universities we work with, it's challenging because they're finding more and more this need to like articulate real precisely what are the lines of acceptability around that in their policies, even in their job postings. And, I was just talking to one university, University of Alabama, Burlington. It was so interesting because they found that like the secret sauce, the magic balance for them in getting more applications was like articulating, hey, only 1 to 2 days at home expectation, not like remote expectation. Most of their faculty actually wanted to come back to campus. It's hybrid, but they actually wanted to spend, I think, like at least 4 days a week on campus, and articulating that even publicly in staff positions, interesting as it was, and even within policy on the university, that has helped them, not just recruiting, but actually retention as well. It's interesting, how do you articulate exactly like what hybrid work is and what the lines of acceptability are? More and more challenging and becoming more and more needed for, being explicit. Another instance I just found really fascinating was instruction across different disciplines is really challenging because hybrid work affects something like an English department, for example. The faculty they're trying to hire, they're often in a different way because it's kind of like a course like English 101, for example, that has the most sections of. It's something that you're going to expect to be taught almost completely remotely. It's a lot of adjunct faculty, and yet it's the kind of thing where students have so much more robust learning outcomes if it's taught in person. Universities are finding for a course like this a really hard time recruiting specifically for that, who's going to be really willing to be there in person every day to teach that, when the position itself, if it's an adjunct, they're often the kind of people, they get to be remote often. It's challenging to articulate these kind of new standards, when you're trying to find talent, because it's super subjective and it's a really quick change to adapt to.
Yeah. And before we get to you, Jackie, just my thoughts on that of every institution is going to make their decisions of like sort of the hybrid spectrum, because it's like technically you could say like if there's any sort of like remote work component, or if like the course has sort of kind of a digital augmentation, or through like the LMS or any other things where it's like, oh, sometimes we're just going to meet in person, sometimes we'll meet online, or we have virtual office hours, and it's like, yeah, you could say it's maybe dialing up a little bit on the hybrid, or those sort of things. So it's like like you're saying, like most faculty want hybrid, and certainly the devil's in the details, like what level are they actually looking for. But if an institution is saying no, we're not doing that at all, it's like, well, the stakes here is likely you might be losing some faculty members, especially in certain disciplines, like you're saying, that are going to go towards institutions offering more of what they're looking for and everything. So I guess, Jackie, just from your point of view, are you seeing kind of just, I presume so, but just any other sort of color you can put to it of like sort of similar dynamics happening sort of large of sort of how institutions are sort of grappling with this war for talent?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I love how you phrase it, the war for talent. And I think it's not just affecting colleges and universities, but it's affecting us globally, right? Across every type of business. I think it's been really interesting because it's so highly competitive, and things have really changed. We just talked about online education, the ability, I can just dial in from anywhere and take my course, or I can teach my course to my students. So you have that greater availability. You also are seeing, or what we're seeing is a shift towards students going for the associate's degree versus their bachelor's. So there's a little bit of a change there. We're seeing declining student enrollments overall, as they're looking at other ways to support themselves after high school, right? So there are other options. And then, as you know, there's been a lot of changes with state and federal regulations and policies that are also having an impact. So You have all of these things just all converging. And then in addition, you have staff, and as Lucas was mentioning with faculty, many are sitting back and evaluating what are my next steps? What do I want? What am I looking for? So it's no longer, I think what we're seeing is with universities and colleges, it's no longer throwing up a posting and saying they will come. It's actually colleges and universities are needing to step up their game related to recruitment marketing and really focusing on their brand and enticing faculty and staff to apply for these positions. So they're evaluating and everything from their wellness opportunities that they're offering. So benefits are becoming a big factor as well. And it's not just the traditional benefits, it's all of the benefits. What's the community? Do I get 1 day a week to work hybrid, maybe half the day in, half the day out, those types of things. Salary is becoming another factor. Well, it's always a factor, right? It's a factor for all of us. It's all of those things that where faculty and staff are sitting back and saying, what do I want? And it may not always match with what the university and college is saying, this is what I'm offering. So I think they're both having to come together to evaluate and step up their game for recruiting as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, like there's this sort of growing kind of chasm and divergence of sort of like, especially I guess in certain institutions and whatnot of like, what expectations a staff or faculty member has and what the institution can or wants to offer and what the demands from students are in terms of modality, in terms of the type of programs, the length or, the topics and everything, and just sort of, where is the growth happening? Where are things contracting? How are they sort of deciding? Where is the institution deciding to put their resources and things like that? So there's so many dynamics, and like you said, like salary always matters. It always has mattered, but like education has had this sort of like halo effect of a sort of like, well, if you work here, you're like called to the work, and it's sort of all these sort of things. It's like there's always going to be a part of that. Like the people who are going to sort of thrive have that sort of like part of their heart that is just called towards education, but they can't just sort of coast on that alone of like, hey, well, you know what you signed up for, right? You're working in higher ed, and it's just sort of how it is where, you're not getting as many perks or, competitive salary and all that. It's like, if we are going to effectively recruit, we have to kind of look at sort of the switchboard of things that we can sort of like, sort of slide up and kind of oscillate here, being like, we can't really do much on salary, but like, there's certainly a pivot of just like, you can work remote, any days of the week you want. It's more flexible, or we have at least this many days or something. There's like things that you can kind of adjust. So Jackie, we'll start with you and then go to Lucas. What can institutions do to be better positioned to effectively recruit faculty and staff?
I think one of the first things I'll say is just modernize. They need to come out of, I think, a little bit of the dark ages, or taking the approach of what we would refer to as like the old school way of doing things, coming away from that paper and pencil approach, pushing down those administrative tasks many times that would rest on faculty. And I know Lucas can layer in that aspect as well. I think there are many things, but the biggest thing is modernize everything, your entire ecosystem. It's not just about the tools and applications and systems that you may use, although they are a big component because that will drive efficiency. And that's exactly what the People Admin product suite is all about, driving efficiencies across the entire way of from a job posting to accepting applicants and cycling through all of that through performance. So it's the entire life cycle there. Making those improvements and really capitalizing on those tools can help reduce some of that administrative burden because you're relying on the system based on triggers to move things through to the next place.
Let's play a game. What keywords does your website rank for? What doesn't it rank for that you think it should? What are a few opportunities you could be winning on if you tweaked some website copy? Okay, how'd you do? Not great? That's okay. Because our friends at DD Agency want to answer all of those questions for you and then some. DD Agency is a higher ed specific marketing technology agency that has conducted countless SEO audits for colleges and universities across the country. In these audits, they detail where you currently rank, what you could be ranking for, exactly how copy should be tweaked on website pages, and much more. If this sounds like something you could benefit from, give those folks a ping and be sure to mention that Enrollify sent you to claim a 10% discount on any of their SEO offerings. Head on over to enrollify.org/DDASEO or simply follow the link in the show notes below. That will guarantee you a 10% discount off of your audit. Again, head on over to enrollify.org/DDASEO to learn more. Now, on to the show.
I do think it's interesting that, and we're seeing this change with many institutions, is where they're really upping their game related to their brand. And they are taking a look at all of those components that we were, talking about, because salary is a factor, but relying on faculty and staff feeling tied to that the work that they're doing, that they're having that huge impact. Yes, you need to capitalize on that, but you also need to help them with tools and systems and applications to make it efficient for them. And without those two things, the idea of, that I'm having that impact, that I'm making a difference, it starts to wane a bit, because you're getting bogged down with the day-to-day of, Google Sheets and, track this here and track that there. And, not being able to be efficient from that aspect, I think, can really have an impact. So looking at those things, I think, would be the key. And then rounding out, as you said, seeing on that scale of the entire ecosystem of what, a faculty or staff member is looking at when they're looking to make a move or to be promoted, seeing what you can adjust and offer to entice them to take the next step. Is what I would say. Well, there.
Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about the digital tools and everything in our next question. I kind of give that a little bit more depth, but like the thought that I had is like, because you're kind of like all the sort of bits and pieces, like they all matter. Like they all matter of how you sort of set up a faculty and staff member up for success. But I'm even thinking of like, what you're saying of sort of like, the metaphor of like, if you're still working the like, pen and paper approach in this day and age, like it's going to be pretty like noticeable and kind of like jarring of like, and the example I thought is like literally like the first impression of like what sort of system or platform you're using for your job portal, and like how is somebody applying or learning more about your positions that are available, and like how you're sort of presenting that position to that person, like that first impression and that brand, that sort of like, you want to be a part of this community and you want to do this job right now in particular, and those sort of things. So like, if it's either like, totally out of sync with what the expectations are, I think, of the moment, and if like, maybe it's like it's too vague, or if it's just kind of flat, or like those sort of things, it's the idea of like that is the sort of like, I don't know, I guess in terms of like paper and pen, and like that's like the smartphone approach or something, like a very much more modern, dynamic and flexible, kind of relevant approach to sort of like how you can more effectively recruit people, is that they're getting an amazing first impression from kind of from the jump.
From that job posting, I mean, straight away. So I look at it as, and you can tell the companies that still do this, where they're just taking a job posting off the shelf. And they're just throwing it out there. So it's so generic. And as you're reading through, as a potential candidate, as you're reading through and you're thinking, I'm not exactly sure what I would be doing, because it's so generic. And that can be hard. And you're seeing that transition where, colleges and universities are actually looking really hard at the actual position and what it is that they're looking for, and using that as a marketing tool, essentially. So, talking more about diversity, equity, and inclusion, things that will matter to those that they want to bring into their community. Because just as a college and university is evaluating a candidate is evaluating the college or university. And so it's just as important that both are marketing to each other based on the skills and what they're looking for there. So I do think those generic job postings, I'm hoping that era is over, yeah. And we can actually, really see and hear what exactly that position entails, and all of those non-salary related benefits that will be included. Really focusing on those. So I've definitely seen a switch there, and a lot of focus on that work-life balance and talking about how they. Universities and colleges are taking time to explain this is how our community operates, and I think that that's important as a candidate, because you're deciding what's important to me and does that match. And I think that that's helpful overall for everybody, so that way you're not wasting time, scheduling interviews and going through that process. So I think that helps. But I'm also seeing actually a shortened amount of time that candidates are spending in that application and throughout that process. So I think I hope gone are the days where you have tons of questions as part of that interview process, or 5 or more interviews that and you have to keep going to the next step. It can take months. And I think that there's less tolerance from the candidate pool perspective to spend that kind of time on that. So I think colleges and universities are looking at that as well. Yes, you need to make sure that there's a good fit, and that is important, but it doesn't need to take months, or where there's radio silence for many months, and where you're wondering, okay, well, I guess I didn't get it, when in fact, that's not it. It just got stuck, at a certain point. So that's where I think, systems and applications can really help with that, to move those things along and make that a little more efficient. But yeah.
Yeah, if I can chime in, that more just faculty-specific recruiting, the same challenges, of course, and the way some of the universities I speak to and we partner with, they've had success in effectively recruiting faculty when they start to really specifically write and market the benefits of working at their college community as a place of vibrancy. It's bustling, it's diverse. People, they're not coming from being purely remote, even in a hybrid environment. Are still kind of remembering that, hey, this is why I got into teaching. At a college community, it's like a unique little microcosm of ideas and diversity, and it's really just a wonderful place to be. And universities are getting more applications and getting better candidates, and they start to, like you both were saying, move away from maybe generic copy and kind of speak more specifically, whether even that's just in their broader marketing on their university website, to just how special, how diverse, how mission-driven even their community and their college is. That's really important too, and it's why a lot of professors got into teaching in the first place, is to be part of that. And connection, even so, like recreating connection has been so challenging, remote, of course, but even in a hybrid environment, recreating connection has been really hard for junior faculty specifically. They tend to want and need a little more, connection. They're a little less established. And so they're finding that in job ads and recruiting and on campus, that they can have more examples of, say, like enhanced faculty onboarding for junior faculty. And just in general, universities are getting much better candidates and more like they're getting an actual acceptance of their offer if they're talking specifically about enhancing faculty onboarding, more touch points, liaisons, as well as more meetings, communication with their chairs. Faculty onboarding has been super helpful for just increasing completion rates overall for training courses. And one more way I think that universities, a few of them particularly I've talked to, have had to put a lot of work in revamping policies and speaking to that again wherever they can in their recruiting copy. And they just had more success as a university having revamped policies that kind of take into consideration all the, this new war for talent and just how challenging the hybrid environment has been. A really specific example of that, since I work in promotion and tenure for a faculty information system, is like tenure clock extensions. Faculty, if they want to be promoted, there's a specific timeline for submitting X, Y, and Z, the amount of publications. We're seeing just flexibility all over the place give a lot better results for universities, flexibility in hiring. But one more area is that revamp policy for something like tenure clock extensions. That kind of flexibility goes a long way to communicating to candidates. This is a place that is current, that is modernizing, that understands what it's like to work post-pandemic, and it's a place that you will flourish at as as an instructor.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like the twofold thing of like doing that kind of work to modernize your policies and practices and everything else, the tools that you're using. And then it's like, talk about that, like revamp how you're sort of like, yeah, the generic job descriptions, like throw that out and like make it very clear. It's like, hey, we're a welcoming community. We have onboarding. This is what it looks like. Like, here's the community and how we sort of, facilitate that and all these sort of things. Cause it's like the thing that's ringing in my head is like, because it would be a shame where it's like an institution is doing all of that work to like modernize, and then they're like not talking about it in like job descriptions or anything else, and like because it's even still sort of honoring the paradigm of like putting the burden on the prospective faculty member or whatever who's sort of evaluating. It's like they have to think through like what don't I know, what do I need to know, like how do they do this, how do they do that, puts all that burden on them. And I think it's like understandable why obviously somebody would just use a generic job description and all these sort of things, like, but if it's like, okay, how can we work on that back end to make it easier, not have it be this like laborious 5-month process to hire one faculty member, and that's why it sort of moves to the back burner, because it's like I don't have time to sort of go through all the sort of hoop jumping and this, that, the other thing, evaluating applications and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot here. Obviously, we're talking, certainly about what you all do and just sort of broadly kind of the practices and policies that institutions should be implementing and everything. But sort of on the tools front, the digital tools side of the equation, I imagine there's a lot of opportunity to address a lot of the things that we've talked about that are really kind of just modern best practices for faculty retention and everything. So I guess talent retention at large. So Lucas, we'll start with you on this one. How do you see investments in digital tools playing into talent retention?
Massively. Massively. And talent retention is key word there. It was interesting, we just had our big PCL People Connect event for our company, and that was a blast. And this one presentation speaking to like this big move from recruiting even more into retention. If recruiting is challenging, like generally speaking right now, it makes sense that more I think it's like 60% of universities 2022 have made a big shift towards retention efforts. Makes sense. Recruiting's hard, so if we already have talented faculty, how do we keep them and help them become even better, help them flourish? So the focus on talent retention is definitely what we think about with our tools. I think about retention a lot with the faculty information system. Like 30 to 40% of faculty's time are spent on like emails, meetings. It's only gotten worse in the past, I think, 2 years. I think one estimate was like 50%, or however that data is gathered. I don't even know, but I can definitely relate to that sentiment at the very least. Reducing administrative burden goes a long way to improving talent retention, because talented people don't like to do boring administrative tasks. Giving back that time to faculty. So we do that in a lot of ways. Promotion and tenure, activity reporting, our two huge thrust, course evaluation. There's a variety of tools in our little faculty ecosystem, but those can all be super documentation heavy, right? And it's crazy the amount of universities who are still paper-based. Like, I have to yearly update, for my chair, my dean of the faculty, all my accomplishments. So I'm going to repeatedly enter them as like a resume bullet point on this document, over on this document, over in this like old web page in my university. So the first thing we do is stuff like build connections in our FIS with PubMed, big providers, ORCID, places that have like huge repositories of the stuff faculty publish. So I can just bring this in, bring in 100 or 200 imports for all my faculty if I'm an administrator, and update all their, all their actual profiles in my university. So I know all their activities, their accomplishments. Save a ton of time if you can just import that with one click. For faculty, we also do work with just outputs of like, if we can make this come into our system super easy so we don't have to do it manually, how can we make it roll up in a really nice looking way? So, one-click download, CVs, that sort of thing, have it auto-populate into like grant applications so they can just really easily know their qualifications and procure more money in the process is a nice thing. A big focus on just trying to make them look good in all the ways while saving them time so they can focus on the sort of teaching and mentoring of students that is important to them, that helps drive student outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, that's really great. I think the idea of the administrative burden, like that's just like the target that we're always going to be sort of trying to chip away at. So yeah, like, and that just gonna, like, the satisfaction levels, I'm sure, will just really increase, because I think it's even the idea of like everything sort of getting bottlenecked in email, of like trying to communicate information between faculty members, or with them and students and all that. So it's just trying to think about like how can we kind of optimize each thing to kind of be more efficient and maybe its own sort of kind of portal or space or those sort of things. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, efficient's the key word, like for talent retention too. Automation, building connections is a lot of our work. Super important because something we say a lot, and like a guiding principle for our development is just like, if you have to enter something manually, you do it one time and then it just auto-populates in every conceivable place. So it's like not just that rolling up into promotion and tenure, but also like web profiles that are already pre-built and fancy and snazzy looking, so you look good. And that accomplishment, that little publication you had to enter rolls up into your promotion and tenure process. Course evaluation from your students that said you're a really great instructor auto-populates into your promotion and tenure process, right? So help you get promoted. Wonderful. I mean, there's a lot of examples, and the more of those connections we can build up for automation, it's just endless, the opportunities to like just give back time and help them get promoted towards just sticking around at the university and becoming a super great instructor.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and Jackie, any thoughts on sort of the role that digital tools play in here?
I think Lucas hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's so critical. It can be anything from even just a simple reminder, as you were mentioning, like, all the emails and things get clogged in your emails, and you're trying to make decisions. Okay, which ones do I focus on first? And if it's just a simple reminder saying, hey, did you move that from this step to the next step? There's more efficient ways that we can handle those things. And I think, investing in that technology and those digital tools are critical. And I know that generally higher ed has been slow, or much slower to adopt technology. But when you do adopt tools like for hiring and onboarding, I mean, that just takes you to the next level, right? And if you don't make those investments, it really does hurt your bottom line, because you're having to make more of a time and effort investment versus being able to rely on systems and tools to help streamline those processes. So, looking at the investment in tools and technology, they definitely have quantifiable improvements that you can really focus on. Recruiting tools, they can reduce the time to hire. That is so critical. Every day that you're going with that vacant position, whether it's a staff, somebody in the dining hall to a faculty member, I mean, that's critical. We need to be able to reduce that, and we have tools to help support that. Even after you've gone through that hiring event and you're onboarding that new employee, whether it's a staff or faculty member, having that all in a centralized location so that they can feel, positive, like they made the right decision to come to your university or college. That is critical. And it helps, it helps colleges and universities make sure that they're finding that best fit candidate as well. So streamlining all of that. I think there's so many benefits. And then on the retention side, because of course I've been focusing on, the upfront, posting the job, getting candidates, working to hire. But as Lucas was saying, retention is critical. Your staff and faculty members, they are your number one promoters of your college and university, and we need to better capitalize on them and have tools to evaluate their performance to help them improve, not just celebrating the positives and everything that they're bringing to your university, but also look at ways that they can get to the next level and show them that path. And really the best way to do that is not drawing it on a piece of paper, but actually having that information in a system that the staff or faculty member can access and know what investment you're making at the college and university level, the investment that you're making in them, and feel confident that they want to continue to stay. So I think those are critical components across the entire life cycle of a faculty or staff member.
Yeah. Well, and it is just like the paradigm shift, like you're saying, like, institutions kind of are slow to adopt, which is fine. Like, because they're like sort of like healthcare systems or government, like these huge sort of enterprises that have to kind of move their collective weight. And certainly higher education has its own sort of unique, aspects of its culture and everything. But like, I think once you've at least like kind of clicked into sort of the mindset of like, if we can implement specialized digital tools that also sort of interconnect, have sort of an interoperability, then it's like, yeah, we have something that really helps facilitate community, and we can sort of quantify that, or sort of, just have all these sort of gains across the board of implementing these digital tools that help with so many different things. And hopefully at least like you've clicked into that mindset. And then to me, it's like, you're just sort of trying to find the best thing out there for what you need, and then do the calculus of like, how much is it? And then, yeah, I mean, if we're saving like X amount of time of all these people, like that's worth, like it's just like a simple equation of just like, okay, we're wasting like all these people's time, which is, X amount of dollars per hour. And if we like shave that down, then it's just like, it just makes easy sense and everything. That's how I've often like thought about these things. But so I appreciate you both, kind of just really kind of getting your arms around, that this sort of war for talent, what are the stakes in the context and everything else, what institutions can do to sort of better position themselves. So I think for sort of takeaways, or things for folks to engage with as we're winding down, Jackie, we'll start with you on this one. If there are any resources, your own or others, that you'd want to share out on this topic that folks can check out, that we can, just refer folks to.
So on the People Admin site, peopleadmin.com, we have a wealth of information, especially under the resources area. So there are several guides. We've got guides to recruiting and retaining diverse faculty and staff. That's a great read. We also have guides on recruitment marketing and how to better leverage what institutions and colleges are already doing. And then we also have another guide, and one thing we didn't talk about, but it's that data, right? Being able to use that data to do the math to say, okay, we can do some savings here. We have a guide on leveraging data and analytics to gain those insights and make strategic business decisions, because that's what they're looking to do. But I think there's a wealth of articles out there. The Chronicle of Higher Education's workforce articles are a great read. They have awesome insights and surveys that folks can delve into there, especially on hiring and retention. We also have the Coupa. I know Lucas knows the Coupa. HR gathered some great data in 2022 on higher ed and employee retention. And then there's some podcasts that might be great. There's one, you can check out the May 2022 episode of Inside Higher Ed's podcast, all about turnover, burnout, and demoralization. I thought that was a great read there. Anything else that you would layer in, Lucas?
Yeah. I like studies, and, to inform the product that, we're building as a PM, is just, what's the actual hard data set? If someone's hearsay, in the kind of post-pandemic of just, but trying to get as precise as possible with, like what is hybrid work about? How many days is that? I mean, those kind of questions I need to know, and it's probably a super boring answer to give you. I wish I had like a good novel to recommend on the issue, but certainly hard data studies, the staffing crisis in higher education from the 2022, from I think it's a partnership here on Consulting Group and Chronicle Higher Education. Super, super good content in there. That's probably one of the best things I've read in a while, just not just for excellent, very operative data, but just they have this like one study. It was like evidence-based best practices for how to help the faculty flourish as they come back to campus. It's like 600 workshops, an hour each they ran this study. And it's just fascinating. The best practices are like, it's got a huge way to retain talented faculty, to like help get them involved interdepartmentally, like, or mentor a new like group of students who never have, just some aspect that is a new experience of the college community. Just goes like a super long way, it seems like, towards making people remember what's awesome about working on college campus. That's a great study. Addressing burnout through cultural change, I think the National American Council of Higher Ed for the past 2022, also excellent, great hard data there. And what does burnout really mean for faculty? It's like a term we also just throw out. I throw that out probably every Friday. Oh, I'm so burned out. What does that actually mean? What are the implications of that, nationally? I like those. Those are two excellent studies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like that too because it's sort of the conference experience is like people saying like, okay, here I'm going to show my work, like what we did, what was the impact, and all that. Because I think there's so many anecdotal things that people can just kind of, you know, yeah, saying like, oh, I'm so burnt out and it's all that. It's like because like life is
Yeah.
stressful and you have to kind of honor and empathize with that. But if it's like, you know, really deep sort of kind of burnout and everything like that, that is a little bit different. Like that term has sort of been co-opted a bit. So it's like if you know, I think like you're saying, like with data or something, or like really getting in research studies and getting things very specific, have kind of tangible examples. Like if, an institution, for example, is just sort of hemorrhaging faculty and staff members, and if hopefully they're doing any sort of, analysis as to why these people are leaving or exit interviews or something, like it would, be where it's like, oh, we have a burnout issue because like people are just sort of like, you know, just having to deal with all that administrative burden or have no community, have no support, and just can't do their job effectively. So they're just sort of thrown in the towel, and they'd be like, I'd love to stay here, but like it's not really set up for success here. So yeah, we'll wrap up with our final question here that we always like to do here of a final thought or call to action on this topic to end the episode with. So Lucas, we'll start with you.
As a call to action, I suppose more universities, it seems like the ones who are adapting, the ones who are thriving, are probably the most self-reflective ones, just willingness to practice, like institution and just personally, because there's a lot of just great academic leaders there, just asking themselves honestly, like, are we making efforts towards retention? Are we even thinking about that? Are these just employees and, they have a salary, so that's all we need to think about? And what are we actually doing around retention? Do we even have the resources to like allocate additional time, money to like a enhanced faculty onboarding plan? That tends to go a long way, I'm finding. How about you, Jackie?
I think I would encourage everyone listening here to think about what we've talked about and the opportunities and options that you have, and then go back within your institution and start asking some of the hard questions, like what tools are we using to support recruitment marketing or onboarding or anything like that. Start asking those questions. How much time is our faculty spending on administrative tasks? If you don't have that data informs decision making. Find a way to get at that, because going back to that burnout comment, I'm very sure that there is some burnout because they're tied up and doing things that they don't feel really truly drive student outcomes. But there is that connection. So what can we do to help, right? So what are how much time is being spent? And then from an institution perspective, what are we doing to support retention? What are we offering our staff and faculty to keep them? They're here already. Let's keep them, because it takes more money to invest to onboard new staff and faculty. So let's focus on those. And what are we doing to, as you were saying, Lucas, to help faculty flourish? If we've spent the time to onboard them, we're excited to have them. We believe that they'll contribute to the bottom line of our university or institution. How are we helping them flourish? And then, of course, the biggest question I always ask is, are you still, or I think about, maybe I don't ask directly, but are you still acting as if we're in a pre-pandemic world? Going back to that old school way of operating, I think things have changed. And so taking a hard look at that and really asking those hard questions, I think will help. And if the answers don't excite or inspire you, then check out some of the resources about tools that we have available, and learn more about how you might be able to move into that more digital, technological, solution oriented space to help your organization.
Love what you both have shared, and just sort of the call to action of kind of taking that time to reflect and sort of evaluate and because I always say like start somewhere, and that's honestly like a place to start is like just doing that sort of reflection and identifying where it's like, oh, we kind of do okay here or there, we're actually doing nothing over here, so that maybe is where we need to like look up some resources and see what tools are out there and that sort of thing. So hopefully folks can take the energy, the inspiration from this conversation and start somewhere to better recruit and engage their faculty and staff and everything. So just thank you both for hanging out and sharing all that you did, and have a good rest of your day.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tiers, Jamie Hunt, Corinne Myers, Jamie Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org.